Stop chasing approval. 10. Stoic ways to reclaim your power and live on your terms. Have you ever stopped to think about how much of your life is spent seeking approval from others? How many decisions you've made not because they aligned with your values, but because you feared judgment? The truth is, most people are prisoners to the opinions of others, living lives that aren't truly theirs. But what if I told you there's a way to break free, a way to reclaim your power and start living on your own terms? Today, we're going to explore 10 Stoic principles that will teach you how to stop chasing approval and start building a life of authentic freedom. These aren't just theoretical concepts. They're battle-tested strategies from ancient philosophers who faced far greater challenges than most of us will ever encounter, yet maintained their inner freedom regardless of external circumstances. The Stoics understood something profound that our modern world has forgotten. True power doesn't come from what others think of you. It comes from knowing who you are and living in alignment with your values, regardless of external validation. This isn't about becoming cold or disconnected. It's about becoming so rooted in yourself that the storms of opinion can't shake you. Before we dive in, I want you to understand something crucial. This journey isn't easy. Breaking free from the need for approval means confronting parts of yourself that you've been avoiding. It means facing the uncomfortable truth that you've been living for others instead of yourself. But on the other side of that discomfort lies something invaluable: genuine freedom. So, if you're ready to stop being a slave to others' opinions, if you're ready to reclaim your power and start living authentically, stay with me. What you're about to learn could transform not just how you interact with others, but how you see yourself and your place in the world. Let's begin. Number 1, recognize that most people are too busy with their own lives to judge yours. One of the most liberating realizations you can have is this: people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. We walk through life as if we're on stage, with everyone watching our every move, analyzing our choices, and judging our failures. But the reality is far different. Most people are too consumed with their own dramas, insecurities, and challenges to spend much time thinking about yours. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote extensively about this in his Meditations. Despite being one of the most powerful men in the world, constantly surrounded by people who depended on his decisions, he reminded himself regularly that others' opinions were fleeting and ultimately insignificant compared to his own moral character. Think about your own experience. How often do you lie awake thinking about someone else's minor embarrassment or mistake? Probably not often. You're too busy dealing with your own life. The same is true for everyone else. That embarrassing thing you said 3 years ago that still makes you cringe, nobody else remembers it. They were too busy worrying about their own embarrassing moments. This isn't cynicism, it's liberation. When you truly internalize that most people are focused on their own lives, you free yourself from the exhausting task of trying to control their perceptions. You realize that the audience you've been performing for barely exists. The judgment you've been so afraid of is largely a projection of your own insecurities. The Stoics called this understanding the view from above. It's the practice of zooming out and seeing yourself from a cosmic perspective. From that vantage point, your concerns about what others think become almost laughably small. The universe is vast, time is infinite, and in 100 years, everyone who knows you will be dead. In that context, does it really matter if someone judges your life choices? But here's where it gets interesting. Even those few people who are judging you, what's actually happening there? Usually, it's a reflection of their own issues, not yours. People judge others through the lens of their own experiences, insecurities, and worldviews. Someone criticizing your career choice might be projecting their own fears about their career. Someone mocking your appearance might be deeply insecure about their own. Understanding this transforms how you receive criticism and judgment. Instead of taking it personally and letting it control your choices, you can see it for what it often is: someone else's internal struggle being externalized. This doesn't mean dismissing all feedback. Some criticism is valuable, but it means not letting others' opinions become the compass that directs your life. Start practicing this today. The next time you catch yourself worrying about what others think, pause and ask yourself, is this person actually thinking about me, or am I projecting my own fears? More often than not, you'll realize you're fighting phantoms. You're afraid of judgments that don't actually exist, at least not to the degree you imagine. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of the most influential philosophers in history, taught that we should distinguish between what's in our control and what isn't. Others' thoughts about you fall squarely in the not in your control category. You can't control what they think, so why waste energy worrying about it? Instead, focus that energy on what you can control: your own thoughts, actions, and character. When you fully embrace this truth, that most people aren't judging you, and those who are probably reflecting their own issues, something profound happens. You start making decisions based on your values rather than others' perceived expectations. You stop performing and start living. You stop seeking approval and start approving of yourself. This shift doesn't happen overnight. You've likely spent years, maybe decades, conditioning yourself to care deeply about others' opinions. Breaking that pattern takes consistent practice. But every time you catch yourself seeking approval and consciously choose to act according to your own values instead, you strengthen this new way of being. Remember, the goal isn't to become arrogant or dismissive of others. It's to become so secure in yourself that external validation becomes irrelevant. It's to reach a state where you can hear others' opinions, consider them if they're valuable, but ultimately make your own choices based on your own judgment. That's true freedom. Number 2, define your own values instead of adopting others. If you don't define what matters to you, you'll end up living by values that someone else chose for you. Your parents, your friends, your culture, social media, all of these forces are constantly broadcasting their values. And if you're not careful, you'll unconsciously adopt them as your own. Then you'll spend your life chasing goals that never actually mattered to you. The Stoics were obsessed with virtue, which to them meant living according to wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. But here's what's crucial. They didn't just accept these values because society told them to. They examined them, internalized them, and made them their own through conscious reflection and practice. This intentionality is what separates someone living their own life from someone living a borrowed one. Marcus Aurelius constantly questioned himself, am I doing what I should be doing? Am I living according to my principles? Or am I being swayed by external pressures? This self-examination wasn't neurotic overthinking. It was the practice of ensuring his actions aligned with his values rather than with what was expected of him as emperor. So how do you define your own values? Start by asking yourself some hard questions. What actually matters to you when you strip away all the external noise? What would you still care about if nobody was watching or judging? What principles would you be willing to defend, even if it cost you social approval or comfort? For example, maybe society tells you that success means a high-paying job, a big house, and impressive accomplishments. But when you really examine your values, you might discover that what actually matters to you is creative expression, deep relationships, or contributing to something meaningful. These aren't better or worse values. They're just different, and they're yours. The problem is that most people never do this examination. They absorb values from their environment and then wonder why achieving the success they've been chasing feels hollow. They climb the ladder only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. Don't let this be you. Once you've identified your core values, write them down. This isn't just a mental exercise. There's something powerful about articulating your values clearly and referring back to them. When you're faced with a decision and tempted to choose based on what others will think, you can consult your values instead. They become your compass. But here's where it gets challenging. Living according to your own values often means disappointing others. If you value simplicity, but your family values material success, there will be tension. If you value adventure, but your friends value security, they might not understand your choices. This is where the Stoic virtue of courage comes in. Seneca wrote that nothing is more honorable than a mind that makes its own judgments. But making your own judgments and living by your own values requires courage. The courage to stand apart, to be misunderstood, to potentially lose approval from people you care about. This is the price of authenticity, and it's non-negotiable. The Stoics also warned against rigid inflexibility. Having your own values doesn't mean never reconsidering them or never learning from others. It means consciously choosing what you believe rather than passively absorbing whatever's around you. It means being open to wisdom from any source, but filtering it through your own judgment. Start implementing this by conducting a values audit. Look at the major areas of your life: career, relationships, how you spend your time and money, what you pursue. Ask yourself, are these choices reflecting my values or someone else's? Be brutally honest. You might discover you've been living someone else's life without realizing it. Then start making different choices, small ones at first. Maybe you've been pursuing a prestigious career path because that's what's expected, but you actually value creative work. Start dedicating time to that creative work, even if it's just an hour a week at first. Maybe you've been maintaining friendships out of obligation rather than genuine connection. Start investing more in relationships that actually nourish you. Each time you make a choice based on your values rather than others' expectations, you're reclaiming a piece of your power. You're declaring that your life is yours to live. And here's what's interesting. Often, people respect this more than you'd expect. There's something magnetic about someone who knows what they stand for and lives accordingly. Remember, you're not accountable to others for your values. You're accountable to yourself. When you're old and looking back on your life, you won't wish you'd lived up to others' expectations more faithfully. You'll only wish you'd been truer to yourself. Start making choices today that your future self will thank you for. Number 3, practice saying no without explanation or apology. One of the most powerful words in any language is no. Yet most people struggle to say it without immediately following up with lengthy explanations, justifications, and apologies. Why? Because they're seeking approval even in their refusal. They're trying to make the other person understand and accept their boundary, so they don't have to deal with disapproval. But here's what the Stoics understood. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your boundaries. You don't need to justify your no to make it legitimate. A boundary that requires the other person's understanding and approval isn't really a boundary, it's a negotiation. Epictetus taught that our power lies in understanding what's truly ours to control. Your time, your energy, your life. These are yours. Nobody has an inherent right to them. When you say no to something, you're not taking anything from anyone. You're simply choosing how to allocate your own resources. Think about how different this is from how most people operate. Someone asks them to do something they don't want to do, and they immediately launch into a detailed explanation. I would, but I have this thing, and then there's this other obligation. And really, I'm just so overwhelmed right now. They're seeking approval for their no, trying to prove it's justified. The problem with this approach is threefold. First, it trains others to expect explanations, making your boundaries negotiable. If you always provide reasons, people learn they can argue with those reasons or make you feel guilty about them. Second, it reinforces your own belief that you need permission to have boundaries. Third, it's exhausting. You're spending emotional energy justifying something that doesn't require justification. A Stoic approach is radically different. No, that doesn't work for me. That's it. No explanation, no apology, no seeking of approval for your boundary. Just a clear, firm statement of your decision. This isn't rude, tone matters, and you can deliver a no warmly, but it's final. When you first start doing this, it will feel uncomfortable. You'll want to fill the silence with explanations. Others might be surprised or even push back, asking why or trying to convince you. This is the test. Your job is to hold the boundary without justifying it. I appreciate the invitation, but it's not going to work for me. I understand you're disappointed, but my answer is no. What's fascinating is what happens when you consistently practice this. First, you discover that most people actually respect clear boundaries more than apologetic, over-explained ones. There's something about certainty that discourages pushback. When you're wishy-washy, people sense room for negotiation. When you're clear and unapologetic, they accept it more readily. Second, you start to respect yourself more. Every time you state a boundary clearly without seeking approval, you're sending yourself a powerful message. My decisions are valid because I made them. I don't need external validation to honor my own needs and values. This builds genuine self-confidence that can't be shaken by others' disapproval. Third, you free up enormous amounts of energy. You're no longer managing others' emotions about your boundaries or crafting elaborate justifications. You simply state your decision and move on. This energy can be redirected toward things that actually matter to you. But here's the crucial distinction. This doesn't mean being inflexible or inconsiderate. If you've made a commitment, honor it. If someone genuinely needs your help and you're able to give it without compromising your values or well-being, consider it. The Stoics weren't advocating selfishness. They valued community and service. But they drew a clear line between voluntary service based on virtue and people-pleasing based on fear of disapproval. The practice is to distinguish between these motivations. Ask yourself, am I saying yes because I genuinely want to help and it aligns with my values? Or am I saying yes because I'm afraid of what this person will think if I say no? If it's the latter, practice your new skill. No, that doesn't work for me. You'll also discover something interesting about relationships when you start setting clear boundaries. Some relationships will deepen because they're based on mutual respect rather than one person accommodating the other out of fear. Other relationships might fade, and that's okay. They were likely based on your willingness to please rather than genuine connection. Remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." This wisdom applies here. Be open to genuine feedback, but don't confuse. Feedback with someone simply being upset that you set a boundary. Start practicing today with low-stakes situations. Someone asks you to do something you don't want to do? No, that doesn't work for me. No explanation. Sit with the discomfort of not justifying yourself. Notice what happens. Most of the time, the other person will simply accept it and move on. Your fear of their disapproval was bigger than their actual disapproval. As you get more comfortable, you can apply this to bigger situations. The job opportunity that looks impressive but doesn't align with your values? I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to decline. No lengthy explanation about why. The family expectation that conflicts with how you want to live your life. I understand that's important to you, but I'm choosing a different path. Clear, firm, and unapologetic. This practice is transformative because it shifts the locus of power. Instead of others controlling your life through their expectations and your fear of their disapproval, you reclaim control by making clear decisions based on your own judgment. This is what it means to live on your own terms. Number 4, stop explaining yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you. There's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to make someone understand you when they've already decided not to. You explain your reasoning, they twist it. You clarify your position, they misrepresent it. You share your feelings, they dismiss them. You're caught in a loop of trying to win approval or understanding from someone who has no intention of offering it. The Stoics had a powerful concept about this. Some things are not in your control, and one of those things is whether someone chooses to understand you. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we can't control others' interpretations of our actions, only the actions themselves. Spending energy trying to force understanding is like trying to make it rain. You're expending effort on something fundamentally beyond your power. This doesn't mean you should never explain yourself or seek understanding. Clear communication is important in relationships, but there's a crucial difference between someone who doesn't understand yet is genuinely trying to and someone who has no interest in understanding because they've already decided who you are. How do you tell the difference? Listen to how they engage. Someone genuinely trying to understand asks questions, considers your perspective, and adjusts their view when presented with new information. Someone determined to misunderstand interrupts, twists your words, brings up past grievances to derail the conversation, or repeatedly forgets what you've already explained. When you encounter the latter, the Stoic approach is radical acceptance. This person is not going to understand you, and that's okay. You don't need their understanding to validate your choices. You don't need to convince them you're right. You can simply live your life according to your values and let them interpret it however they will. Seneca wrote about the futility of seeking approval from everyone. If you live according to nature's guidance, you will never be poor. If according to people's opinions, you will never be rich. This applies directly here. If you need everyone to understand and approve of your choices, you'll never have peace. There will always be someone who doesn't get it. But what about important relationships? What if it's family or close friends who are determined to misunderstand you? This is where it gets painful, but necessary. You have to decide. Is trying to win their understanding costing you more than accepting their lack of understanding would? Often, we sacrifice enormous amounts of energy, peace, and even our own authenticity trying to make certain people understand us. We explain and re-explain. We adjust how we present ourselves. We might even alter our actual choices just to be understood. But if someone is determined to misunderstand you, none of this works. You're pouring water into a bucket with no bottom. The Stoic solution is to focus on what you can control, being clear, honest, and acting with integrity. Beyond that, let go. If someone misinterprets your motives, that's about them, not you. If someone creates a narrative about you that isn't true, that's their story, not your reality. Your job is to know yourself and live according to your values, not to control others. Perceptions. This practice requires developing what the Stoics called inner citadel, an unshakable core of self-knowledge and values that external misunderstandings can't penetrate. When you know who you are and why you make the choices you make, others' misinterpretations become background noise rather than existential threats. Start implementing this by identifying the people in your life with whom you're stuck in loops of explanation. You know the ones. Every interaction leaves you feeling exhausted and misunderstood despite your best efforts to clarify. Make a conscious decision to stop trying to convince them. Be clear once if necessary, then let it go. This might sound like, I hear that you see it that way. I see it differently, and I'm comfortable with my choice. Then change the subject or end the conversation. No more circular arguments. No more exhausting attempts to shift their perception. Just clear statement of difference and moving on. What's liberating about this approach is that it frees you from a losing game. You can't win an argument with someone who's determined to misunderstand you because understanding isn't their goal. Their goal might be to be right, to maintain their worldview, to keep you in a certain box, or simply to engage in conflict. When you stop playing, the game ends. You'll notice something interesting when you implement this. Some relationships will actually improve. When you stop being desperate for understanding, you remove a dynamic of pressure and frustration. The relationship can exist on different terms, perhaps less intimate, but also less contentious. Other relationships might fade, and that's okay. A relationship that only works when you're constantly explaining and justifying yourself isn't healthy anyway. Remember, this isn't about being closed off or refusing to communicate. It's about recognizing when communication is futile and protecting your energy accordingly. It's about understanding that you can't control whether someone chooses to understand you, but you can control whether you waste years trying to force it. The Stoics believed in living virtuously and letting that speak for itself. If someone misinterprets your virtue, that's their limitation, not your problem. Your responsibility is to act with integrity, not to ensure everyone interprets your integrity correctly. That distinction is crucial to your freedom. Number 5, build self-approval strong enough to withstand disapproval. At the core of seeking others' approval is usually a deficit of self-approval. When you don't genuinely approve of yourself, your choices, your values, your life path, you desperately seek that approval from external sources to fill the void. But external approval is like trying to fill a leaky bucket. No matter how much you pour in, it never stays full. The Stoic solution isn't to become arrogant or delusional about your flaws. It's to develop a grounded, realistic sense of self-approval based on living according to your values and working to improve your character. This creates an internal stability that external disapproval can't shake. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Your approval or disapproval of yourself isn't about your circumstances or what others think. It's about your own judgment of yourself. This is simultaneously sobering and empowering. You can't outsource this fundamental relationship with yourself. So how do you build genuine self-approval? First, by aligning your actions with your values. When there's coherence between what you believe matters and how you actually live, you naturally approve of yourself. You might not be perfect. The Stoics never expected perfection, but you're living with integrity, and that's the foundation of self-approval. Second, by setting and achieving small goals that matter to you, not goals designed to impress others, but personal standards you hold yourself to. Maybe it's exercising regularly, treating people with kindness, continuing to learn, or maintaining your composure under pressure. Every time you meet your own standards, you reinforce self-approval. Third, by practicing self-reflection without self-judgment. The Stoics, especially Seneca, advocated for daily self-examination. Before bed, review your day. Where did you act according to your principles? Where did you fall short? What can you learn? This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about honest assessment and commitment to growth. What's crucial is distinguishing self-approval from self-satisfaction. The Stoics weren't advocates of complacency. You can approve of yourself, recognize that you're doing your best to live well while still seeing areas for improvement. In fact, this combination is ideal. Genuine self-approval that provides stability, plus commitment to growth that drives progress. The test of genuine self-approval is how you handle disapproval. When someone criticizes you or judges your choices, notice your reaction. If you immediately become defensive or anxious, it indicates fragile self-approval. You're still dependent on their validation. But if you can consider their perspective without your foundation shaking, you have genuine self-approval. This doesn't mean being unmoved by all feedback. The Stoics valued wisdom and were open to learning from others. But there's a difference between considering criticism and being destabilized by it. When you have strong self-approval, you can hear criticism, evaluate whether it's valid, and make changes if warranted. But your core sense of self remains intact. Building this kind of self-approval takes time, especially if you've spent years seeking validation externally. But every day offers opportunities to strengthen it. Every time you make a choice based on your values despite others' potential disapproval, you're choosing self-approval over external approval. Every time you set a personal standard and meet it, you're building trust with yourself. One powerful practice is to become your own voice of approval. Most people have a harsh inner critic but no inner supporter. They instantly notice their failures but rarely acknowledge their successes or efforts. Counter this by consciously offering yourself the approval you seek from others. When you handle a difficult situation well, acknowledge it. I'm proud of how I handled that. When you make a choice aligned with your values, despite external pressure, recognize it. That took courage, and I respect myself for it. This isn't narcissism. It's giving yourself the validation that's actually your responsibility to provide. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes from being independent of external circumstances, including others' opinions. But you can't achieve this independence without first cultivating a strong relationship with yourself. Self-approval is the foundation of that relationship. As you build this, you'll notice a profound shift. Disapproval from others becomes less threatening because it doesn't shake your core sense of self. You're not dependent on their validation because you're providing your own. This doesn't mean you don't care what anyone thinks. The Stoics valued wisdom from others, but it means others' opinions inform you rather than define you. Remember, self-approval isn't about being perfect or better than others. It's about living according to your own standards with integrity and effort. It's about being able to look at yourself honestly and say, I'm doing my best to live well, and that's enough. When you reach that point, you've reclaimed your power from the approval-seeking trap. Number 6, accept that not everyone will like you, and that's their right. Here's a truth that might sting. Some people aren't going to like you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. More importantly, they have every right not to like you. Just as you have preferences about people, others have preferences too. And sometimes those preferences won't include you. That's not a flaw in you or them. It's just reality. The Stoics were remarkably pragmatic about this. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor, understood that some people would dislike him regardless of what he did. He wrote about accepting this reality rather than fighting it. I can't be angry at my relatives. I was born to work with them. He recognized that trying to make everyone like him was not only impossible, but also a waste of energy. Most people spend enormous amounts of energy trying to be likable to everyone. They adjust their personality, suppress their opinions, and perform whatever version of themselves they think will win approval. But here's what's paradoxical. This strategy usually makes you less likable, not more, because people can sense the inauthenticity. Think about the people you actually like and respect. Are they the ones constantly adjusting themselves to please everyone? Probably not. They're likely people who are authentically themselves, with clear boundaries and values, even if not everyone appreciates them. There's something attractive about someone who's comfortable being themselves, even though, or perhaps because, they know not everyone will like it. The Stoic approach is to accept this reality and stop fighting it. Not everyone is going to like you. Some people's personalities just won't mesh with yours. Some people will misunderstand you. Some will judge you based on incomplete information. Some will dislike you for reasons that have nothing to do with you. You remind them of someone, you have something they want, or you simply represent something that triggers their insecurities. When you truly accept this, not just intellectually but viscerally, it's incredibly liberating. You stop trying to win over people who were never going to like you anyway. You stop contorting yourself into shapes designed to maximize approval. You stop taking it personally when someone doesn't warm to you. Epictetus taught that other people's judgments and preferences are not in your control, therefore they shouldn't disturb your peace. This applies perfectly here. Whether someone likes you is ultimately their business, not yours. Your business is to be a person of character, to live according to your values, and to treat others with respect. Beyond that, whether they like you is up to them. This doesn't mean being intentionally off-putting or not caring about the impact you have on others. The Stoics valued kindness and treating others well, but there's a difference between treating others with respect and trying to make them like you. The former is within your control and aligns with virtue. The latter is outside your control and leads to inauthenticity. What's interesting is what happens when you stop trying to be liked by everyone. First, you become more likable to the right people, those whose values align with yours and who appreciate authenticity. Second, you free up enormous energy that was being wasted on people who weren't going to like you anyway. Third, you become more comfortable in your own skin because you're no longer performing. Start practicing this by noticing when you're adjusting yourself to win someone's approval. Maybe it's a colleague who seems cool toward you, and you find yourself trying extra hard to win them over. Or a social group where you feel you have to be a different version of yourself to fit in. These are the moments to practice acceptance. Not everyone will like me, and that's okay. This also means stopping the mental loops where you replay interactions with people who don't like you, trying to figure out what you did wrong or how you can fix it. Sometimes the answer is nothing, and you can't. Accept it and redirect that energy toward people and activities that actually matter to you. Remember, wanting to be liked by everyone is actually a form of control. Trying to control others' perceptions and feelings about you. But as the Stoics repeatedly emphasized, you can't control external things, including other people's feelings. Trying to do so is fighting reality, which is a fight you'll always lose. The freedom comes in letting go. Let people not like you. It's not your problem to solve. Your problem is to be someone you can respect, someone living according to values you believe in. If others don't appreciate that, it says more about the mismatch between their values and yours than it does about your worth. You'll also discover that being disliked by certain people is actually a good sign. If someone whose values you don't respect dislikes you, that's probably indication you're doing something right. If people who are judgmental, shallow, or cruel don't like you, consider it a badge of honor. Not all approval is worth having. So today, give yourself permission to be disliked. Not because you're trying to be offensive, but because you recognize that being your authentic self means some people won't resonate with you. That's not failure, it's honesty, and it's the only path to building genuine connections with people who actually appreciate who you are. Number 7, remember that opinions change. Today's approval could be tomorrow's criticism. If you've spent any time on social media or in the public eye, you've witnessed this phenomenon. Someone is praised one day and criticized the next, often by the same people, despite not changing their behavior. Public opinion is fickle, swinging wildly based on trends, moods, and incomplete information. This is exactly why the Stoics warned against building your sense of self on the foundation of others' approval. Marcus Aurelius observed that fame is fleeting and meaningless. He would write about how emperors who were once revered are now barely remembered, their names mere whispers in history. If the approval of entire civilizations fades into irrelevance, how much less should you care about the approval of individuals in your daily life? Consider this. Someone might approve of your choices today because they align with that person's current beliefs or situation. But people change. Their circumstances change, their values shift, their moods fluctuate. Something they approved of last year might irritate them today, not because you changed, but because they did. If you've built your life on their approval, you're building on sand. This is one reason why chasing approval is so exhausting. You're trying to hit a moving target. Even if you successfully win someone's approval today, maintaining it requires constantly adapting to their changing preferences and opinions. You become a chameleon, shifting colors to match whatever background you're against, never developing your own stable colors. The Stoic alternative is to develop a fixed inner compass based on principles that don't shift with opinion. Wisdom doesn't change based on trends. Justice remains justice regardless of popular opinion. Courage and temperance are virtues whether anyone recognizes them or not. When you orient your life around these constant principles rather than variable opinions, you achieve stability. Think about the times you've sought approval for a decision. Maybe choosing a career path, ending a relationship, or making a lifestyle change. You probably encountered wildly different opinions from different people. Some approved enthusiastically, others criticized sharply. If you'd based your decision on winning approval, you would have been paralyzed. It's impossible to please everyone, but here's what's more insidious. Even if everyone approved at the time, that approval might not last. Circumstances change, and suddenly the choice everyone praised is now the choice they question. Your career that impressed them might look foolish when the industry shifts. Your relationship they endorsed might be criticized when it ends. Your lifestyle they admired might seem irresponsible when their own values change. This is why the Stoics emphasized living according to your own rational judgment rather than others' opinions. Your judgment, when based on sound principles and honest self-reflection, provides consistency that external approval never can. You become a stable point in a sea of changing opinions. Start practicing this by noticing when you're making decisions based on current approval without considering how fleeting that approval might be. Ask yourself, if the people currently approving of this choice later criticized it, would I still think it was the right choice? If the answer is yes, you're on solid ground. If the answer is no, you might be too influenced by their temporary approval. Also recognize that some people's approval is actually a red flag. If someone who's consistently made poor choices in their own life approves of your choice, that's not necessarily reassuring. If someone who's critical of everyone approves of you, they'll likely be critical of you soon enough. The quality and consistency of the approver matters, not just the fact of approval itself. The Stoics would encourage you to seek wisdom from those who have demonstrated sound judgment over time, but even then, to filter that wisdom through your own rational examination. Approval from someone you respect is worth considering, but it shouldn't override your own judgment. You're the one who has to live with your choices, not them. What's liberating about this perspective is that it frees you from the tyranny of popular opinion. You don't have to constantly monitor what others think or adjust your course based on the shifting winds of approval. You set your direction based on your values and principles, then maintain that direction regardless of whether people are currently praising or criticizing you. This doesn't mean being stubborn or closed to feedback. The Stoics valued learning and adjusting course when genuinely better information emerged. But there's a difference between adjusting based on new wisdom and adjusting based on shifting opinions. One is growth, the other is instability. So today, commit to making decisions based on principles rather than approval. When you're tempted to choose something because people currently approve of it, pause and ask, do I believe this is right based on my values? Would I still choose this if everyone's approval turned to criticism tomorrow? If you can answer yes to both, you're on solid ground. Remember, people's opinions are like weather, constantly changing and ultimately beyond your control. Don't build your house on weather. Build it on the solid foundation of your own principles and values. That foundation will hold regardless of whether the forecast is sunny approval or stormy criticism. Number 8, distinguish between constructive feedback and judgment. Not all criticism is created equal, and one of the most important skills you can develop is distinguishing between feedback that can help you grow and judgment that seeks to diminish you. The Stoics were eager students of wisdom, welcoming genuine insights that could improve their character. But they were also adept at recognizing when someone's criticism was more about the critic than about them. Marcus Aurelius wrote about gratefully accepting correction when someone can show you a better way, but he was equally clear about ignoring criticism that came from malice or ignorance. This distinction is crucial. Refusing all criticism makes you unteachable. Accepting all criticism makes you a puppet, controlled by everyone else's standards and often contradictory judgments. Constructive feedback has certain characteristics. It's specific rather than vague. You could improve this aspect of your work by doing X is constructive. You're just not good at this is judgment. Constructive feedback comes from someone who has relevant experience or expertise. A successful entrepreneur's feedback on your business approach is probably more valuable than criticism from someone who's never built anything. Constructive feedback is offered with good intent. The person genuinely wants to help you improve. You can feel the difference. There's a quality of goodwill, even when the feedback is critical. Judgment, on the other hand, often feels like an attack. It's vague, personal, and comes with a sense that the person wants to diminish rather than help you. Constructive feedback focuses on behaviors and choices you can change. Judgment often targets who you are fundamentally. This approach isn't working well. Have you considered trying this instead? Is constructive. You're just that kind of person. Is judgment. One opens doors for growth. The other tries to lock you in a box. The Stoic practice is to remain open to constructive feedback while filtering out judgment. This requires self-knowledge and confidence. When someone offers criticism, you need to be secure enough to consider whether it's valid without being shaken if it's not. This is where the inner citadel comes in, that stable core of self-knowledge that allows you to evaluate criticism without being devastated by it. Start by noticing your reaction to criticism. If you're defensive, it might indicate either that the criticism hit on something true you don't want to acknowledge, or that you're not secure enough in yourself to evaluate it objectively. If you immediately accept all criticism as truth, you might not have strong enough internal standards to measure it against. A balanced approach. When you receive criticism, pause. Don't react immediately. Consider the source. Does this person have relevant expertise and good intentions? Consider the content. Is it specific and actionable or vague and personal? Consider your own judgment. Does this align with your values and goals, or is it trying to pull you towards someone else's vision? If the feedback is genuinely constructive, be grateful and implement it. The Stoics believed that wisdom could come from anywhere, and being teachable is a virtue. If the feedback isn't constructive, acknowledge it briefly and let it go. Don't argue or over-explain. Remember our earlier principle about not explaining yourself to people determined to misunderstand you. What's interesting is that when you develop this discernment, people's criticism loses its power to derail you. Someone offers judgment disguised as feedback. You can smile, say, "I'll think about that," and immediately forget it. Because you've evaluated it and found it wanting. Someone offers genuine insight. You can receive it without defensiveness because you're not threatened by areas where you can improve. The Stoics also practiced seeking feedback intentionally from people they respected. Rather than being passively influenced by whatever criticism came their way, they actively sought wisdom from mentors and peers whose judgment they valued. This proactive approach means you're getting feedback that's actually useful rather than just random judgment from whoever feels like offering it. Implement this by identifying a few people whose judgment you genuinely trust. People who have demonstrated wisdom in areas you care about, who know you well, and who have your best interests at heart. Actively seek their feedback on decisions and areas where you want to grow. Their input is worth 100 random opinions. At the same time, practice recognizing judgment that's not useful. Maybe it's from someone who doesn't understand your values or situation. Maybe it's from someone projecting their own issues. Maybe it's just mean-spirited. Whatever the case, you can acknowledge it without internalizing it. I hear that this person thinks X about me. Is this true? No. Does this align with my values? No. Moving on. Remember, the goal isn't to become impervious to all outside input. The Stoics valued wisdom and learning. The goal is to become discerning, to receive feedback that helps you grow while filtering out judgment that seeks to diminish you. This discernment is key to living on your own terms while still remaining open to growth. Number 9, build a life so aligned with your values that approval becomes irrelevant. The ultimate freedom from seeking approval doesn't come from learning to ignore others or becoming emotionally hardened. It comes from building a life so authentically aligned with your values that whether others approve becomes genuinely irrelevant. When you know you're living as you should, others' opinions become interesting data points rather than existential necessities. The Stoics believed that virtue, living according to wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, was the only true good. External things like reputation, wealth, and yes, approval were preferred indifference. Nice to have, but not essential to your well-being or moral worth. This framework is incredibly liberating because it means your worth is determined by your character, not by external validation. Marcus Aurelius lived this principle despite occupying perhaps the most approval-dependent position imaginable, emperor. Everyone had opinions about his decisions, yet he constantly reminded himself that his job was to act with virtue and wisdom, not to win everyone's approval. He made decisions he knew would be unpopular when he believed them to be right. That's freedom. Building this kind of alignment between your values and your life requires first, as we discussed earlier, defining what you actually value, but it requires more than that. It requires the courage to make choices that reflect those values, even when those choices aren't popular, impressive, or understood by others. Maybe you value simplicity, so you choose a modest lifestyle, even though you could afford more impressive things. Society might judge this as lack of ambition, but you're content because you're living according to your values. Maybe you value deep relationships over extensive networks, so you invest heavily in a few friendships rather than maintaining dozens of shallow connections. Some might see this as antisocial, but you know you're prioritizing what matters to you. Maybe you value meaningful work over prestigious positions, so you turn down offers that would look good on paper but wouldn't fulfill you. Others might question your career choices, but you sleep well at night knowing you're doing work that matters to you. In each case, you've prioritized alignment with your values over others' approval. When you live this way consistently, something profound happens. You develop an unshakable sense of rightness about your life. You know you're where you should be, doing what you should be doing, in the way you should be doing it. This knowing provides a foundation that external disapproval can't shake. This doesn't mean never doubting yourself or being closed to questioning your choices. The Stoics practiced regular self-examination, but there's a difference between productive self-reflection. Is this choice truly aligned with my values? Could I be doing this better? And the anxiety that comes from seeking approval. What will people think? Am I impressive enough? The former is growth-oriented and comes from internal standards. The latter is fear-based and depends on external validation. When your life is genuinely aligned with your values, you engage in the former without falling into the latter. You remain open to improvement while being secure. in your fundamental direction. Start building this alignment by auditing your major life areas against your stated values. Your career, does it reflect what you say you value? Your relationships, are you investing in what matters to you or maintaining connections out of obligation or fear? Your daily activities, do they align with your priorities, or are you living someone else's version of a good life? Where you find misalignment, start making changes. This isn't about dramatic overnight transformation. It's about incrementally adjusting your life so that your daily reality increasingly reflects your deeply held values. Each adjustment strengthens the foundation of self-approval and reduces your dependence on external validation. You'll know you're succeeding when you start experiencing what the Stoics called ataraxia, a state of serene calmness and psychological stability. You're not constantly anxious about others' opinions because you're not depending on them. You're not defensive when criticized because you know you're living according to your principles. You're not seeking approval because you've already given it to yourself. This state doesn't mean being unmoved by everything. You'll still feel emotions, care about people, and value connection, but these will be choices you make from a place of fullness rather than needs driven by emptiness. You connect with others because you want to, not because you need their validation. You care about certain people's opinions because you respect their wisdom, not because you need their approval to feel okay about yourself. The irony is that when you reach this state, when approval truly becomes irrelevant because you're so aligned with your values, people often approve of you more. There's something magnetic about someone who's genuinely living their truth without apology or explanation. Even those who don't agree with your choices often respect the integrity with which you live them. But by then, you won't be doing it for their approval. You'll be doing it because it's how you've chosen to live, and that's the ultimate freedom. Number 10, remember your mortality. Life's too short to live for others. We've saved perhaps the most powerful Stoic practice for last. Memento mori, remember that you will die. This might seem morbid, but it's actually one of the most liberating truths you can internalize. Your time is finite. One day, probably sooner than you think, your life will end. In light of this reality, does it make sense to spend your precious, limited time seeking approval from others? Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself of his mortality. He would reflect on the fact that everyone he knew, including himself, would soon be dead and forgotten. This wasn't pessimism, it was clarity. When you remember that your time is limited, it becomes much easier to identify what actually matters and what's just noise. Think about being on your deathbed, looking back on your life. In that moment, will you care how many people approved of your choices, or will you care whether you lived authentically, loved deeply, and stayed true to your values? Will you regret that you didn't impress more people, or that you wasted time trying to impress them instead of doing what mattered to you? The research on this is clear. People at the end of their lives consistently report regretting not being true to themselves, not expressing their feelings, working too hard, and not staying in touch. With friends, notice what's not on that list. I wish I had sought more approval from others. Nobody dies wishing they'd been more concerned with others' opinions. Memento mori is a tool for cutting through the noise of daily concerns and getting to what's essential. Yes, someone might disapprove of your choices, but in 100 years, both you and that person will be dead and largely forgotten. Your great-great-grandchildren probably won't even know your name. In that cosmic context, does their disapproval matter? This isn't nihilism, the conclusion that nothing matters. It's the opposite. It's recognizing that because your time is finite, it matters enormously how you spend it. Every hour you spend seeking approval from someone who doesn't actually matter to you is an hour you've lost forever. Every decision you make based on others' expectations rather than your own values is a piece of your life you've given away. The Stoics use memento mori not to become fatalistic, but to become intentional. When you remember you're going to die, you become much more selective about how you spend your time and energy. You stop sweating small stuff because you recognize how little of it will matter. You focus on what truly counts: character, relationships, meaning, contribution. Start practicing this by regularly reflecting on your mortality. This doesn't mean obsessing over death, but simply acknowledging its reality. A simple practice. Each morning, remind yourself that this day is not guaranteed. You might not see tomorrow. Given that, how do you want to live today? What do you want to be true of this day? When faced with a decision where you're tempted to choose based on others' approval, bring in mortality awareness. I have limited time in this life. Do I want to spend it seeking this person's approval or doing what I actually think is right? The answer usually becomes very clear. You can also practice visualizing the end of your life. Imagine being old, looking back. What choices will you be proud of? What will you regret? Now make decisions today that your future self will thank you for. This isn't morbid. It's using the reality of death to clarify what matters in life. Memento mori also helps with the fear of others' judgment. When someone disapproves of your choices, remember, both of you will be dead relatively soon. Will this disapproval matter then? Almost certainly not. Will having lived authentically matter? Absolutely. The cosmic perspective makes small concerns appropriately small. The Stoics combined memento mori with carpe diem. Seize the day. Because your time is limited, use it well. Don't waste it in people-pleasing, approval-seeking, or living according to others' standards. Live boldly, authentically, aligned with your values. This is what it means to truly seize your days, to live them as your own rather than as someone else's. In the end, you're going to die. There's no avoiding it. Your reputation will fade. Others' approval or disapproval of you will dissolve into nothingness. What remains is the life you actually lived, whether it was yours or whether you spent it trying to be what others wanted you to be. Choose yours. Conclusion: the freedom of living on your own terms. We've covered 10 powerful Stoic principles for stopping the chase for approval and reclaiming your power. Let's briefly recap. Most people are too consumed with their own lives to judge yours as much as you fear. Define your own values. Instead of unconsciously adopting others, practice saying no without explanation or apology. Stop explaining yourself to people determined to misunderstand. Build self-approval strong enough to withstand disapproval. Accept that not everyone will like you, and that's their right. Remember that opinions change. Today's approval could be tomorrow's criticism. Distinguish between constructive feedback and judgment. Build a life so aligned with your values that approval becomes irrelevant. Remember, your mortality. Life's too short to live for others. These aren't just philosophical concepts. They're practical tools that, when implemented, fundamentally transform how you move through the world. You shift from reactive to proactive, from seeking approval to offering yourself approval, from living according to others' standards to living according to your own. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. You've likely spent years, maybe decades, conditioning yourself to seek external validation. Rewiring that pattern takes consistent practice. But every time you make a choice based on your values rather than others' expectations, you strengthen your new way of being. The freedom that comes from this practice is profound. You're no longer a slave to others' opinions, adjusting your course based on the winds of approval. You're the captain of your own ship, setting your direction based on your values and maintaining it regardless of whether people are cheering or criticizing. From the shore, this doesn't mean becoming isolated or not caring about anyone. The Stoics valued community, relationships, and contribution, but they understood that the most authentic relationships are built on honesty, not people-pleasing. When you stop seeking approval, you paradoxically become more connected to yourself first and then to others in a genuine way. So I invite you to start today. Pick one principle from this video and implement it. Maybe you'll practice saying no without explanation. Maybe you'll stop trying to win over someone who's determined to misunderstand you. Maybe you'll simply remember your mortality and let that truth clarify what actually matters. Whatever you choose, know this: the life you build when you stop seeking approval is authentically yours in a way it can never be when you're living for others. And that authenticity, that alignment between who you are and how you live, is the foundation of genuine happiness. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago. The wisdom hasn't changed. The question is, will you apply it? Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe for more content on applying ancient wisdom to modern life. And most importantly, go live your life on your own terms. You have one life, and it's yours to live. I'll see you in the next one.